Hello, everyone. Let me make sure my microphone is on. Oh, yeah, nice. I'm Rodrigo. I'm part of the Devpass team. Thanks you all for attending this special event today with us. Please, before we continue, make sure to like this video to help this video reach more people, and follow us here on YouTube to don't miss the next ones. We have a lot of tech talks and special events coming in the next weeks. So we are receiving today very special guests. Antoine van der Lee works as staff engineer at WeTransfer, and he's the creator of the SwiftLee, one of the best blogs and newsletters on iOS and Swift development. Eduardo Bocato works as iOS lead at Adidas, and it's also one of the tech leads of our Devpass community. We've gathered some questions with our community, and we'll use them to chat about iOS development, Swift and SwiftUI best practice, and general career development advice. So, as Antoine has sent in the chat, please share with us your questions too. I'll be here behind the curtains helping them, and we take your questions and we will happy to answer them as well. So before passing it to them, I'd like to share a little bit about Devpass. For those who don't know, Devpass is a global platform where software developers of different levels learn and practice hard and soft skills through immersive learning experiences that simulate the day-to-day of product teams. We call them dev sprints. A dev sprint is a 2-week simulation, as I said, of a developer squad where you learn about technology and collaborate with other developers and contributing to open source projects on our GitHub. All this experience is led and monitored by an experienced developer, the tech lead. Tech leads are specialist developers in different technologies, in different patterns, architectures, and other stuff like that, like iOS, Android, Swift, SwiftUI, MVVM, Viper, and so on. And they are responsible for leading and sharing knowledge during the dev sprint. Our community of tech leads is made up of experienced tech leads who work in the best tech companies around the world, such as Eduardo Bocato, who is here with us today, will be our official host. And as I said, he works at Adidas as lead iOS in Amsterdam. When you join a dev sprint, you get 10 hours of live interaction with this experienced developer, the tech lead, hands-on experience and portfolio for your resume. As I said, the code you write, you contribute to an open source repository, and the tech lead is responsible for code review this code. And you get this hands-on experience and portfolio for your resume. And also access to our global community on Discord with exclusive discounts on upcoming sprints. So to celebrate today's special event, we have a coupon code you can use to get 15% discount on the next international dev sprints which use the English as main language. So in order to get this discount, just access Devpass page, choose your preferred sprint, and use the code SwiftLee15 off during the checkout. One more thing before we start. If you are an experienced developer and you got interest in sharing your knowledge through these live sessions and experiences with us, please access this link in the bottom of the page. And I'm sure we have a lot of great experience to offer to you too. So that's it from me today. I would like to now to invite Antoine and Eduardo Bocato. welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us today. I'm sure it will be a really nice talk. Um, so please, you can start introducing yourselves, and then we get to the great questions we got from our community. Okay?
Sounds good. Thanks for the
Have a
introduction,
good
Rodrigo.
session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So, Bakato, well, yeah, we didn't even met this evening, right? We didn't really introduce each other, but we met not long ago at AppDAFCon.
Yes, yes. We met like 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think.
Indeed. Yeah. So yeah, we didn't know each other, and then we met at the conference in Amsterdam. It's called AppDAFCon. Great conference. If you ever want to visit Amsterdam and visit the conference, I can highly recommend. But take it away, Bakato.
Yeah, and it was a great talk there about all the new things, some, any, and everything.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, a lot, a lot of options and things to do with new possibilities and so on. So basically, I think the Brazilian guys already know me. I did a talk some days ago, and maybe you can tell a little bit of history, like before we start the questions and answering things. Like how did you got to iOS, and then we start from that.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, for those that don't know me, I'm Antoine van der Lee. I'm the blogger behind SwiftLee, the curator behind SwiftLee Weekly, well, basically everything SwiftLee. But in my day-to-day job, you can find me at WeTransfer, where I'm working for over 5 years now, working on the main applications, leading the iOS team, really making sure that everything is as stable as possible and as performant as possible. I started developing when it was iOS 4. That's like 2009, 2010. It was just post Arc, so I didn't have to write retain and release that often. But I did start with Objective-C. I still remember those days where you had to wrap your head around what is a delegate, what is a data source. That I remember those days. It was quite a learning curve, but through several digital agencies, I got to work on a lot of projects, gained a lot of experience. I basically dropped myself in the depth, trying to figure out, how to nail a project in as less time as possible, without code reviews, without unit tests, pushing all third libraries into the projects. Well, it was quite a journey. And eventually I started writing articles as well, basically as a personal knowledge base, as well as kind of like when you want to speak at conferences, it helps if you have a little knowledge base to share where conferences can build upon. But yeah, that kind of start, that hobby turned out to be quite addicted. And yeah, that's what we know as SwiftLee today, where I reached the milestone of 200 articles not long ago. It's quite insane if you think about it. So yeah, that's about the introduction, I would say.
Yeah, we kind of have similar backgrounds, I would say. I started a little bit late, about iOS 5. Same thing, no quality, just deliver. Lots of agencies, lots of apps. I tried writing some stuff myself, but I just stopped. So
Gotcha.
maybe one day we can do something. Yeah, so let's go to the questions we have. So first, we have some topics like we saw before, and maybe we can start about if you were starting to implement an iOS app today, what would you use, UIKit or SwiftUI?
Yeah, I think I get quite a few questions every week from people through Twitter or as a reply to my newsletter. And I bet this is one of the most often asked question. Like SwiftUI is super new, or still relatively new, let's say that. UIKit is there for much longer, but I believe there are more and more engineers just getting started with mobile development, and I bet they just start with SwiftUI, and UIKit is that big mountain somewhere in the background that you don't want to touch or don't want to climb. But it's still, quite an important part, I would say, of my day-to-day development. Maybe also because I'm biased, because I have the knowledge already for UIKit. But it's still important. Though if I look at myself, right, if I would start a new project today, I'm almost always just pressing the button for SwiftUI, right? So I create a SwiftUI app. I want to get rid of that app delegate that starts to grow, containing all the shared instances, or those massive delegate methods. So I guess I want to answer this in two ways. Yes, I would definitely use SwiftUI from the get-go, but I'm pretty sure that I can't build a complete app without UIKit, just because there are quite some limitations there.
Yeah, I think something very similar. Nowadays, I'm still a bit skeptic about navigation. I know we got new APIs, but if I would have to think, maybe a mix, because when you start to look at very crazy navigation flows that we all have to do once in a while, SwiftUI is you can do some things there, but still, I think UIKit gives you more power in this sense. Yeah, you can do a bit of hacky things to achieve this, but I would go with a mix, and as much as possible when it goes through UI, SwiftUI is faster, easier, simpler to understand.
Yeah, in fact, if I look at the code base that we transfer, then that's exactly what we do. We try to build all the UI logic kind of as much as possible in SwiftUI, but the presentation is all done through UIKit, using coordinators for those that are interested.
Yeah, we kind of have a similar setup on Adidas. We have legacy code, as everyone has, so mainly UIKit, but everything new we do, we are using that nice combo of TCA and SwiftUI, but the navigation has its own library that's powered by UIKit for now. Okay, so maybe we can go to the next one that's in the same topic. So what do you think are the main drawbacks of using SwiftUI in production?
Yeah, this is kind of a nice segue into what we just discussed, right? Like, I guess the answer of this is the reason that we can't build an app completely in SwiftUI. I actually remember myself, I was writing a new update for a personal app I'm developing called Stock Analyzer, and I created a simple tab view. So it was like 4 tabs, which underneath is a UI tab bar controller. And I was testing out the app myself, and you know that if you have a navigation controller, that if it's like 4 pages in, you can press the tab and it will pop all the way back to the root. It doesn't work with SwiftUI. And I was like, okay, this is odd, right? Like, why doesn't this work? So I started looking at a simple property or kind of like a modifier to enable it. But the only solutions that I found used like SwiftUI introspect, where you need to grab the underneath tab bar controller, keep a reference of the navigation controller, and when there is like an tag on the tab view and you need to tap, and then you need to reference that navigation. Well, you see where I'm going. It's kind of a summary of some of the edge cases that you run into. So 80% of SwiftUI goes all well, and then you want to finish like the last pieces, and then you start running into the limitations of SwiftUI because it's still relatively new. Let alone if you want to support iOS 13, iOS 14, right? Like the APIs back in the days weren't as complete as they start to become right now. So I guess SwiftUI is really the future, and it's becoming more and more mature. We gained a lot of flexibility during WWDC this year, but naturally it just will take quite some time for it to ramp up completely. And Yeah, I don't. Yeah, the funny thing is that I read about an article, right? Like somebody said, like Apple is Sherlocking my open source projects, and that's a good thing because there are so many of those open source projects trying to solve the limitations of SwiftUI, and then a new SwiftUI version comes out, and you can drop that library and actually use native code. So yeah, I guess that's a short summary. I won't go over all the limitations that I've been running into, but you get my point. And I think in a few years we'll get in a much better situation with new updates of SwiftUI.
Yeah, so for me, as you said, for me the main thing that hurts me, as I just said, is navigation. So someday someone will come with a crazy flow, and then SwiftUI normally has that tree. And if you want to try crazy navigation, you need to start yourself controlling the stack somehow, and then you can find very different crazy solutions. And also segueing into navigation, if you look back and okay, I want to decouple this, I want to decouple that, again with SwiftUI you are back to kind of a tree-like structure. So how to solve that, and it turns more and more difficult depending on your flows. And for me the main drawback is still crazy flows, very complicated flows. But for the rest, I don't see any issues other than if you need to support iOS 13, maybe think twice, because the workarounds you have to do
Yeah.
are too crazy.
Yeah, and I mean it depends case per case, right? Like if you have a very simple metadata representing application or something with not too complex views, where you can rely on really native behavior, you could maybe get away with most of the stuff. But yeah, once you get into like the custom, beautiful applications that we need to design sometimes, then you're in for a treat.
Yeah, so then this also segues well to the next one, which is which tips do you have for developers to start using SwiftUI in a UI kit based apps?
Yeah, so if I look at how we do it at WeTransfer, we don't create any pressure to rewrite everything in SwiftUI suddenly now today, right? Like there's no rush, there's no pressure to start suddenly drop everything, start rewriting everything in SwiftUI. Although you don't want to make the problem any bigger, right? So it would be good to at least think about writing new views in SwiftUI as much as possible. So in the end, you will certainly start growing the code base of SwiftUI usage more and more. What we also try to do is when we revisit a certain view because it needs a certain update, that could be a nice moment to progressively update that view into SwiftUI. And the funny part is that sometimes it's even faster than adjusting the existing UI kit view, right? Like SwiftUI makes certain types of views much easier to build. So altogether, I would say just take it step by step, but do come up with a plan that you and your team can use, and that you at least have like a dot on the horizon where you're working towards to.
Yeah, and so we kind of, again, we basically do very similar things. So what we have been doing is every time we have a possibility to write something new or improve something somehow in SwiftUI, or maybe, for example, we rely a lot on Promise Kit. So sometimes we get the service there with Promise Kit, and maybe let's start preparing for Combine or async await. Then the next step, next time we need to go to that view that uses that service, we could refactor. But we also don't push to rebuild everything and so on. The only push we are trying to do is, for example, we are moving to a design system. So let's make the life of everyone harder if they want to continue with UIKit and push for SwiftUI somehow.
Yeah, smart. But you do make a good point, right? This is not a tip just for SwiftUI. It's also the same with a few years back, everybody started adopting Combine, and now it's suddenly async await, right? Like, is there still a place for Combine, or should I now rewrite everything and use async await everywhere? Once again, take it step by step, and maybe you should at least make it possible for your core network layer to use both regular completion callbacks, maybe as well regular combine methods, but do also provide like an overload for async await, so you can at least start adopting it in new features accordingly.
Yeah. So if you don't have anything else to add, we can jump to the next big topic.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So future of iOS development. What WWDC release do you believe will become an iOS standard?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this question because I prepared an answer for this one, because there are so many great things that were announced, right? And I went over those changes, and I thought by myself, like, which of those will I in the end be the most happy with? I guess you can guess that I'm quite a fan of the existentials and the opaque type improvements. For those that don't know, I'm giving a talk this season at several conferences regarding this topic. I truly believe, even though it's quite a advanced topic for many, hard to wrap your head around, like, when do I use some, when I do I use existential any, what does it even mean? I'm pretty sure that once you get used to writing generics in that way, it will become more natural, and in a few months we will all write them without realizing, maybe even, also because Xcode 14 will kind of suggest us to do so. But it's not the only answer that I wrote down, because there's a very small change that I believe we all really like. It's the if-let shorthand. It felt so stupid always to copy the same name, and it made it more complicated than needed. I didn't use it that often because I'm not really developing on Xcode 14 yet, because I'm actively pushing builds out. But yeah, I can't wait to really adopt that. And yeah, I'm not sure how far you want to let me go, but I have 3 more items to show.
Yeah,
I guess I can quickly mention them.
You can continue. Yeah, just go. Just to mention, as you said, the talk on extensions. I was there with the whole team, almost whole team. One guy was not okay because of COVID, but if you have the opportunity, watch the talk. It's gonna change your mind. It helps a lot to understand this. And I also had something about existentials. So for me, every time you reach some point that the generics are not enough or too complicated, you end up having to do something. And before understanding the whole thing of creating a wrapper, building an any type, erasing, it's too much. And I think the extensions and the idea behind that can make this more popular and easy in time. Not saying that it's like everyone says, oh, I need to use generics here, I need to use extensions, but it's going to be easier, simpler, as you said. It's a suggestion from the whole Xcode, so why not?
Yeah, and I think the biggest change there is that there's a common error that you can't use the protocol because it has associated types or self-conformance inside the protocol definition. I so often run into that error when I'm writing regular code up until Xcode 14, and I always thought, like, why doesn't this work? Like, it's pretty much the same as a regular protocol, but I just added an associated type, and now you're confused. And I believe those moments, they will just work, right? That's exactly what they did in the Swift session during WWDC. Like, it suddenly is gone. And I believe that's also something that you don't realize, but it will make our lives much better when developing Swift.
Yeah, so go on the next ones.
Exactly, because now I created a t-shirt for everyone, and they want to know probably. But there are some Xcode 14 improvements that I really enjoyed, and I won't go over them in too much detail. But the build performance analysis will be a big impact for many teams. especially if you have a really large project, getting insights into the whole build pipeline, being able to make a build 10 seconds faster will have a huge impact on a large team. So I truly believe that's a great addition. The instruments for concurrency, being able to see how concurrency works in your code. Maybe now we don't really use async await that often yet, but as soon as you adopt it in more places, that instrument is going to be, well, quite useful to improve. But the last one, which I'm really curious to see how it's going to change the environment. Xcode Cloud is now available for everyone, right? And I honestly didn't really use it yet, mostly because at WeTransfer we use Bitrise. In my personal projects, I can be a bit more precise in letting CI run my test, and maybe I should improve there. But like the easiness that Xcode Cloud provides, the integration in Xcode, it will only become better. I'm keen to see how it will be adopted and how it will improve over the coming years.
Yeah, it's gonna change a lot of things. I'm not sure if big projects will use that much, because if you think back, like as you said, on WeTransfer you use Bitrise. We also use Bitrise. We have very complicated and different workflows. So maybe adapting this to the new Xcode Cloud is not going to be that easy. And another thing that I think it's interesting is the other functions of the async await. So before seeing the new packages they added as extensions, before that I was kind of thinking, okay, what if I just use async await to basic stuff that are not streams? But now you can also consider it for strings, and it's simpler. You have algorithms baked in that Apple provides and help you. So I think this is also something that can change the way we do, because if you look back at all apps, most times the biggest thing we are doing is calling the network somehow. So it can change a lot.
Yeah, totally. I've heard many saying like this is the game changer in regarding using combine in projects. It's interesting to see how that will evolve. I can't hear you anymore. Are you muted?
Shit. Sorry.
No worries.
So we can go to the next one, which is basically part of what we were saying. So how do you think the iOS developer experience will continue to evolve in the future?
Yeah, if you would have asked me a few years back, I would say like, yeah, we will get async await. I'm waiting for the pretty build to turn into something which is now called Xcode Cloud. I still have that simple wish of Swift data, where core data turns into like a Swift version. But if I really look into like what will the developer experience be, then like if you look at the past few years, we got SwiftUI previews, which weren't as stable as we hoped, but it did change the way we develop views nowadays. They improved even more this year, but I believe there's more room for it to grow even further. Where I would probably, like it's really view focused, but I would also love to see if we can just change code and it would just directly work in a running build in the simulator or something. It all comes down to instant building, or maybe not even building because it's just working. I don't know. But I truly believe that could be like the real change in the future for developer experience. But it will take some years for sure. And if you look into like what is the future of Swift, we know that we're working towards Swift 6. It was quite interesting to see that this year's WWDC announced Swift 5.7 and not Swift 6, but it's because it's not complete yet, right? Like they're not where they want to be yet. There is a road to Swift 6 that you can find on the Swift forums, and I picked a few topics that they discussed there. The goal basically is to support more platforms to create faster builds. But all together, the real goal is to create a fantastic developer experience, right? So you should be highly productive and don't worry too much about side effects or memory management or those kind of things. And one of the examples is structured concurrency, right? Like writing concurrent code in a structured way is a real game changer. And I believe that's the future of Swift as well, where we can basically just focus on creating apps quickly without thinking too much about retain release that we had to do back in the days, right? Like it's actually like a red dot in the whole history of what we call Swift development. So yeah, that's a bit my look at the future, but I'm curious to see what you think about it.
For me, one thing I agree with that, like structured concurrency is gonna change a lot of things, and I think Xcode is getting better. So, for example, now we have less occurrences of the autocomplete breaking down, because before every new version you were out of autocomplete for days, even months sometimes. And one thing that I think is going to evolve, and I see it's going that way, is also SPM. So if you think on big projects, so you have lots and lots of modules, you need to start thinking on how to make it faster. And from my past experience, we had a big project all on SPM, and I was missing features that you can find on Buck, Bazel, or Twist for caching, for example. SPM has some kind of caching, but you don't have full control over it. So if I see this going in the way to kind of become Apple's Twist somehow, which gives you a lot of power to do lots of different things. And I think the whole way of being able to separate things so easily is going to change a lot, and it's going to evolve more and more. Because if you look back, think on the Objective-C days. Did you create a lot of frameworks? Did you separate things? And then you have CocoaPods. Yeah, you could do it a little bit harder. Then Carthage, simpler, and depending on the what you're doing. Then with SPM, it's way easier. So if you want to just create a package, you go there, create a package, and that's it. But before that, you had to understand how to do the whole cartridge thing, and then the CocoaPods and so on. So I think if this continues to evolve, we may reach a point that we don't need those tools anymore, or just for very specific situations.
I want to know the name of the cat now. I think we're all curious now.
It's Boo. I can get him. Come on. He always does that.
Oh, beautiful cat.
Yeah.
People that follow me know that I know how this feels. I sometimes have meetings, and we got a Bernese Mountain Dog, 50 kilos large, and he sometimes just jumps on me. But I made sure the door is closed, so it doesn't happen right now. But it's a classic thing when you're working from home, right?
Yeah, I have a similar situation, but my dog is not that big. I have a French bulldog, and he just starts running around, and the cat runs together.
Yeah.
And man, it's too much.
Yeah. But either way, yeah, I see what you mean. We use Swift Package Manager at WeTransfer as well. Not at a scale that it's really creating issues for us that we want to solve in a complicated way. But I've seen those complaints in the community as well. And it's good that if you look at WWDC, they announced a lot of changes to SPM. They take it serious, the like new feature development for it. So I'm pretty sure that they will continue making it better, which is a good thing.
Yeah. I think now we can answer some questions from the chat.
Let's do it.
So Rodrigo, yeah, there's one. You can go first.
Yeah, so my projects are quite simple, honestly. But I think the most interesting project to discuss here would be WeTransfer. Um, Not everybody might know, but we have multiple apps that we transfer from, which Collect and the Transfer mobile application are the two larger applications that I developed with my team. And what we created is an SwiftUI package and Swift Package Manager package, which contains all the individual packages that we use. So we have a networking package, we have like extensions package where all well often used extensions can be found, as well as subscriptions, the WeTransfer API package, all of those kind of like packages that you want to quickly adopt in WeTransfer applications, to quickly build certain apps in a quick way. And for example, it allowed us during the hackathon to create a new version of the Mac application in only 3 days, just because we could grab those packages and start using it right away. Horizontal, vertical, or some kind of slicing in your code base. Like I said before, we don't really run into crazy issues with build performance or those kind of things. So we're not doing fancy stuff in any way. The only thing I can tell is that I've looked at creating static libraries instead of dynamic libraries, but yeah, not for any specific reason. So far, our team has not been complaining about long build times or shit. So um, yeah, I don't have much to give in that regard, but maybe you have some experience there.
Yes, I have some crazy situations. So nowadays we have some challenges regarding this kind of question there. So when I got here, we had already modular application with Xcode Gen and some kind of separation, but without a lot of very defined barriers for the system and so on. So we started moving slowly into something more structured and separating a bit more. So we had, for example, that module that everyone has once at least, that you don't know where to put things. And then you just put everything there and it's called core. And then you need to split core somehow. We even had a meeting as soon as I got to the company that was called Core Evolution. And then this Core Evolution turned into the first foundation team on the company, really taking care of this kind of decisions and really looking into the future. So we started from that, and then we moved into and a bit of context. We're also not just one app. So for example, the app I work is the Confirmed app. So if you're in Europe, US, you may know it, is the app that sells the Yeezys and those very fancy, expensive things from Adidas. And also we have an app from China. We also have an app that's the Adidas app that you can buy things. We have a retail app, and they are all in a monorepo. But we have another issue, not issue, but another challenge, which is we also have the sports apps. And then comes Runtastic, and we need to share things. So we have a mix of options there. So we kind of have one thing we call, it's not exactly the term, but we started calling it that, which is a meta repo. So it's basically a bit of monorepo, and when we see we need to share somehow and there's some kind of barrier, we move this out, and then it's kind of a new monorepo that integrates with the others. So that's why meta. And in this sense, we have separation. So we're going towards a new architecture that's kind of our own way of building the me features architectures that Twist suggested back then some years ago. So we have separations between interface models. We have separations into feature models. And this goes on and on. But basically, we try to separate the data layer, domain layer, an integration layer, and that can mean lots of things, and then the UI. So if you look, the idea is that if you decide to exclude the UI, you can build the whole thing again with all the other layers, integrating them with something as the integration layer. So it's kind of slicing, a mix of horizontal, vertical sometimes. So it's a lot of techniques together.
Sounds like a challenge.
It is.
So I think we can both answer this question. Did you watch carefully during my talk, Ricardo?
Ooh, man, you can start. I don't remember everything.
I don't want to put you on the spot now. Yeah, so for Swift code, so you know you have the default body implementation for a SwiftUI view, right? Like you're returning an opaque type called some view, but the fact that you don't have to put in the return keyword on every layer is because you use result builders, and result builders are adopted in the view builder, which is a result builder. So actually, view builders are actually used when you create a regular SwiftUI view. But the example where I often use it is when you have like an let's say like a separate method called footer view, create footer view with a property is pro. And based on the is pro boolean, when it's true, you want to show like a pro view because you're pro, and otherwise you want to create an upsell view because you're not pro. Without view builder, you have to use if else and then return return that view as an opaque type, because it could either be a text or a VStack. I'm not going to explain what opaque types are. You can go to my blog. There are some detailed articles around it. But if you want to get rid of that return statement, you can use the view builder attribute, which, like I said, is a result builder, and it allows you to return right away, or basically you don't see it being returned. That's the nice thing of result builders, right? Like I really enjoy using them. It's looking more seamlessly. But yeah, other than that, I've not been using it in any other places than in just methods or properties in a SwiftUI view, which makes sense. It's a view builder.
For me, it's kind of similar. So what I try to do is every time I see some kind of conditional, I say, okay, I'm not sure what's going to happen here. I don't want to return anything. I don't want to pass a specific type. So let view builder solve this kind of things. And if you go back to the function builders and you see how it works, you're going to see that a good part of it is mainly looking into these conditionals. So for me, it only makes sense to at least use there, but I don't have any other special way of using it.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned they were called function builders before, right? Like when they were still
I use them with the underline
in production. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they're now result builders. Now they're official. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was still function builders. See, I need to go back and read some things.
Yeah. How do you learn new things? Yeah, I think it's good to state that I'm still Googling quite a lot of things. Stupid things like the background color changing of a navigation bar is with UI, or I don't know. Think about it. You simply just don't know everything. So yeah, it's on a scale, right? Like searching something similar, like changing a background color of a certain element, is a small thing, but you search for it and you'll learn about the answer and you learn something new. For me, the answer is really in my articles that I write every week. So it's funny because people ask me like, why do you have the blog, right? Like, why do you write that often and so on? But to me, like as an engineer, you need to stay up to date and you need to learn about the new things that get developed. It's moving so fast. Only WWDC offered us more than 100 sessions, right, to go over, and it's hard to keep track of it. And for me, I'm trying to write down my learnings along the way. So I've got a big list of topics that I want to go over, and every week I just pick one of those topics and I write about it on SwiftLee. And I basically let you all benefit from my learnings by creating an article for it. And by creating that article, you start to ask yourself questions, right? Like, okay, I'm writing about opaque types. So what do people want to learn about opaque types? Okay, so the sum keyword. So people will probably search for the sum keyword. Like, what does opaque mean? Or when should I use opaque types? Can I only use it as a return type? Or can I also use it as parameter types, right? I already start to create those chapters for a certain topic, and that's automatically a way for me to learn all the ins and outs of a certain in-depth subject, if that makes sense.
I think it's very similar. So I Google a lot of things. I go to Medium and put a lot of things on my reading list that I don't read everything, of course. And also, I think it's a rabbit hole. So, for example, you're on Twitter, you see a new thing from your blog, and then you see, okay, do I know that? And then you start with a small thing you see, and then there's a link in your blog to another post that goes to another post and another one, and then you start going on and on. But another thing,
then I got you.
Yeah. And then there's another thing that I think it's very, very important. So other than just reading and looking for things at Google, one thing that helps me a lot to learn new things is code reviews. So sometimes you see something there, and we don't need to go over what is a good code review and all, but a huge part of it for me is it's not just adding what you think there, but understanding what's going on. And sometimes you see someone used one thing that you never saw, and then again it's the rabbit hole. You want to understand so you can comment on that, or at least clap like really good implementation. So it helps a lot, this kind of things, this dynamic, and also mentoring. So when you need to mentor someone and teach some kind of topic, at least for me, I don't feel I'm doing a good job if I cannot go at least a little bit further than what I'm trying to show. So on the dev sprints, so we went into any publisher, and then someone asked, okay, what is this any? How does this work? And again, goes back to the rabbit hole thing. If you start, you won't be able to stop.
Yeah. And you mentioned a great thing, code reviews, right? I bet it's quite intimidating the first time you open a pull request at a new company, and you're quite afraid that like what will people say. And I remember my first day at WeTransfer. I joined after working 4 years at an agency without any other peers on the project, without any code reviews, and I basically just thought like, okay, I'll just continue from what I'm used to, right? So I just push code that I'm used to. So it was a very big PR. I added RxSwift because I was used to it. So the whole project was full of RxSwift suddenly. And I remember having two colleagues, one from Uber and the other one worked on Sketch Cloud. So they were quite experienced, right? Like a whole different experience than I was used to. Yeah, and I got a lot of feedback, and it was intimidating, and I felt bad at first. Like, okay, damn, I'm not doing a good job here. Like, but the way you need to look at it, and that's exactly your point, right? Like, it's an opportunity to learn, and feedback is not a bad thing. It's an opportunity to improve the things that you already did. And I think my learning curve really peaked from the point that I started working at WeTransfer, because I was challenged much more, and I was kind of challenged to find out about better ways of writing code, challenged to learn new things. And yeah, code reviews are a great way of starting there.
Yeah, so maybe we can go to the next. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a funny one, right? Like, so this was when it was iOS 4 and iOS 5, right? Um, I made a good choice because I could choose between Android and iOS, and I picked iOS. I would definitely tell my junior self, like, hey, do that again, because I'm happy with that decision. No, but a key way for me to learn and play around with APIs, and it's really like a personal project, and being able to start your own project as soon as possible, even if it's just like a small application, not that valuable for many users, but start with it, push it to the app store, create that environment where you can fail because it's your personal project. It doesn't matter what you do. Learn about App Store Connect, learn about uploading screenshots, get your build rejected, see how you need to reply to those messages, like things that might sound like a day-to-day job for many engineers that do it for years now. It's intimidating when you're a junior developer. Like the first time you need to push that app to the app store from the company, and you're afraid that maybe it's still pointing to staging or something like that. Start a personal project. It doesn't matter what. Maybe it's like a note-taking score board for your son that's playing football or something. At least it's a tool to learn and play around with new APIs, and that way you will gain more experiences that you might benefit from at the company where you will start working or are already working at.
Yeah, I want to go a little bit on the other way. So for me, I think one thing that would be really important if I heard more when I was a junior is learn to communicate. Why? So for example, in my experience, we didn't have a lot of iOS developers around. And I see there's a lot of Brazilians here, and in Brazil it's really hard to get a Mac. And your first opportunities, maybe you were hired just because you have a Mac, and that happened a lot. So if you learn to communicate well from the start and you really focus on that, you can go further even in tech. So I had issues that I had no one to talk to, like architecture wise. So if you don't know how to communicate what you want to do, what you want to learn, and so on, you can't solve these issues. So I had to go to the backend guys and understand how they did there to maybe replicate that on iOS, and also help me to learn the basics. Sometimes reading through is not enough. So if you can communicate well, you can just jump to the guy on the desk on the other side of the office and say, man, I don't know this. Can you please explain me that? So I think it's a big part of actually any level you are. But for juniors, understanding that you can communicate, you can ask for help, it's even more important than just digging into the tech. You need to dig into the tech, but how to make this faster and improve this process, communicating well, I would say.
Good tip, definitely. Yeah, this is a nice one, right? I bet you have a big experience in this as a mentor, but I can share my perspective. Um, it's a thing I learned from discussions with my dad during dinner, where he always said, I'm 100% sure this is true. I'm right, and you're wrong. And then I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna win this discussion. I'll come back to you tomorrow when you realize you were wrong, right? It's the same thing in a way with junior developers and communication, where I always make them like the same level as me. I don't see them as juniors. I expect them to be, well, as knowledgeable as I am. It's obviously not true, but they can have a certain experience that you are not aware of, right? Like you're a senior and you feel like you need to solve it in that way because you're used to it, but maybe that junior just learned about something brand new in a new SwiftUI book, and he could actually teach you something, right? So I think what I want to say is that don't expect them to know everything you know, but the other way around as well. Something obvious for you might be unknown to juniors, right? So communicate with them, stay open, try to help them, be fair in the way you communicate. Don't make something sound stupid for them because they're junior, they're just getting started, and create an environment where they can ask questions and pull those questions out of them. So it's a safe environment where juniors can grow, because you have the knowledge to let them grow, and that's a great thing.
Yeah. So again, as we just said, goes back to communication. And another thing I would say that you also said is empathy. So you don't know their whole background. Maybe they're not coming from tech. And one thing that I like to do, for example, is don't give the answer right away. Help them to reach at the same reasoning you had to find a solution. So instead of saying, okay, do this, no, show all the way that you get to that reasoning in that solution. So focus on how to get to that solution and not directly to the solution. Because in this way, as we said about how to learn things, it goes into that rabbit hole. You're going to see something that you don't know, and maybe you need to go back to some basic thing. And maybe you, as a senior, don't even know how to explain that. So if you know really well how to do the basics and explain them, it's going to help a lot from both sides. And also recognize that you don't know everything. And like you said, maybe they will show something that you think you know, but you don't.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe it's also good to, in the end, ask them whether you answered their question, right? Like, as a junior, it can be intimidating to say, like, I still don't understand, because you're afraid that you are stupid and you're not performing as expected or such, right? Juniors really need to have that safe environment to be honest, and you can help them by pulling that out of them, like, did I answer your question or not?
Yeah, and again, as I said, creating a safe environment that they know there are no dumb questions, and mainly their focus should be learning. And for some seniors, even this may sound annoying, like, oh shit, that guy is asking so many questions. But then it's a learning experience for you too. So if they don't ask things, then it's a bad sign. So try to create an environment safe enough and healthy enough so they are not afraid of asking. It doesn't matter if they think it's a dumb question. If it's a dumb question, it doesn't matter. It's not a dumb question. It's a simple question. And
Exactly.
then you can go to more complicated things.
So can we maybe, because it's almost the end, right? Like, it would be fun to answer some more questions from the crowd.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Those are two questions in a way. I'm going to pick the last one because that's one that speaks the most to me. And it's actually something I'm currently doing. So I'm really addicted to getting the best out of a certain thing, and I won't stop till I'm there. And right now we have monitoring set up at WeTransfer. We use Datadog quite intensively, and we got monitoring in place with like a percentage of transfers that succeed. And at this point, it's about 90%. 90% of the transfers succeed, and that 10% fails due to internet connection or all kinds of errors, right? That's the engineering problem I'm currently on. And what I enjoy solving there is to really narrow down each error and really find out, like, what's the next thing that I can do. So I enabled multipath TCP. I enabled waits for connectivity. It's a property you can enable on URL session configuration. Those are all really small pieces in the whole implementation. And we're going to release that next week, and I'm going to watch the monitor and see if it goes up. Yeah, that's something I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna also answer the second one first. So for me, I'm very keen to developer experience. So finding ways to make the life of the developers better, either by defining architectures or creating some kind of tooling, or maybe just a guide, a standard. So I really like those things, because if you make the developer's life easier, you can do more things in less time with more quality, and like seeing that makes me very happy. And normally the problems behind this, the challenges there are really interesting. So as I said, logging, man, do we really know what is proper logging? You know how far you can go when you start talking about logging. It's a huge thing. And I would say that for the other question, like less than best coding practices that drive me crazy is trying to abstract things too early. So abstracting things is really good, it's really important, but you need to learn the balance. Sometimes you don't need to create that protocol right away. You don't need to create that crazy wrapper use case view model controller on the first moment. So this drives me crazy, making things overcomplicated, over engineered. I get crazy with that. Like, why not? Why do this? We can solve the same thing in a simpler way that everyone understands.
Agreed. I think we have one more question we can answer, and then we can round up. And I like this question. It's a great question. How about you starting this time? Because I took away the stage all the time, right? Like maybe you can pick this one first, and then I'll answer it
Okay.
second.
Yeah, and it's even funny because the last question was from one of the members of my current team, and this one is also from one of them.
Maybe
Yeah.
they are tricking you. Like
Yeah,
you have to be careful in your answer, because otherwise they'll
they
get
always
back
do
to you
that.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, the do not reinvent the wheel goes also a good segue from what I was just saying. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You have some solution that can solve the problem easily. So yeah, just don't overcomplicate things, and or stay away from dependencies in built-in health solution. Goes back to the depends. Everything we can answer with depends. So what you are aiming for? Do you just need to solve something pretty simple? Are you looking at the roadmap for 2, 3, 4 years? Are you are you able to continue maintaining that thing? So, for example, do you really need to build a whole new architecture, or can you use TCA, for example? Can't you extend TCA? And so depends a lot, and it's gonna be case by case. But I would say to answer those questions, you need to think, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Is it a one-off? Are you looking long term? And then you can really start to think if you need to build your own thing or just use a dependency to solve that, and so on.
I think it's also good to mention that TCA stands for the composable architecture. Not everybody might know. I see it in
Oh yeah,
in the
sorry.
comments as well. Yeah, if you're in it, like you know what you're talking about. But yeah, so it's challenging now because the question went away, but I still remember what we're talking about. At WeTransfer, we have that fine balance as well, but we do enjoy building things ourselves, but only up until a certain point, right? Like you need to maintain it yourself as well, and if you can benefit from a large project out there in the community, yeah, that can be beneficial. But adding a third-party library for everything just because that's easier and quicker also means you're going to depend on more external projects, right? So it's really a trade-off there. And I believe these things also evolved over the years, right? Like back in the days, you started with iOS 5, you told me. You had PS collection view, I think. Was it from Peter Steinberger? I'm not sure. But there was no collection view yet, right? So you kind of like for a basic thing already needed a third-party library. Viewing PDFs, it's now natively possible. Many more things are much easier to write these days just without a third-party library. Just like a networking library, where before you would always use AF networking or Alarm of Fire. I guess nowadays with URL session, especially with async await support or combined support, yeah, you can stay away from dependencies and build an in-house solution is not even that much work anymore. And it does mean that you simplify the number of dependencies that you need to rely on, where it's the question whether they will be maintained, right? Like, so I guess once again, it all comes down to the balance, and it really depends on what you're planning to build, whether you want to spend days, weeks, or months on it, like a case-per-case scenario where in the end it should all be about maintenance and reliability.
And as I said, a big part of it is, if that's the case for you to use something, can you maintain that? So it's not just like, do I need to every time build something? No, you need to at least understand what you are using. But I also really love to build things, but sometimes it's not the best choice.
Agreed. So is he a big fan of you or about the topic that we discussed at that point? That's the question now.
It's a friend of mine from Brazil.
Nice. All right, I think it's time to round up.
Yeah. So you're coming back, Rodrigo?
I think he will let us say goodbye ourselves.
So hello,
nice.
Hello again.
Hey.
You invited me, so I'm here.
Yeah, of course.
Guys, thanks a lot. This talk was awesome. Thanks for the interaction, everyone in the chat. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to answer all of them, but I'm sure both Antoine and Eduardo can interact with you through Twitter and other social networks. So feel free to reach them. If you want to know more about Devpass, please visit our website and know more about our learning experiences that simulate the day-to-day of product teams with code reviews, pair programming, live codings, and so on. So that's it for today. Thank you again a lot, Antoine and Bocato. It was such a pleasure to have you with us today. And I hope to see you soon in other special events or tech talks of Devpass, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks for inviting me over. It was super fun. And yeah, looking forward to meeting everyone on Twitter as well.
Yeah, so as you know, Rodrigo, just send a message. I'll be around. And I hope we can meet again soon, Antoine.
Yeah, so
bye-bye,
for those,
everyone.
by the way, interested, SwiftConf and FrenchKit, those two conferences. So
yeah,
maybe see you there.
I'll try. So thanks, guys. Bye-bye.